Hello guys, welcome once again. In the last video, I have shown you how to write a function that returns value. So I have written a function called sum and it takes two parameters and then it makes the sum of these two numbers and return the value. So for example, I want to print the sum of some numbers. I will just say cout and then sum, and in the bracket I will pass just those two numbers. For example, 354 and 654, and when I run the program it will give me the sum of these two numbers because we are returning the sum as an integer here, and it thinks that the sum is an integer and prints this number. Now in this video I'm going to talk to you about one more really important property called default arguments or default parameters. So what exactly I mean by default arguments or default parameter is you can initialize your function parameter with some value. So for example, I have written a function for making the sum of these two values, first number and second number. I can initialize these parameter by some values. For example, I will initialize this first number is equal to 20 and the second number is equal to 10. So this will be 10. Okay. So this is called default argument declaration. Okay. So what this means is we have initialized our parameter with a default value. So for example, now if you can even call this function like this without passing any parameter, because what happens is when it sees this function here, it goes to this function and it sees that I already have the parameters or the values of these two parameters. So let's see what happens when I run the program. I will compile this and run it, and you can see it gives me the sum of these two default value even though I haven't given any parameter to this sum, right? So this is how you can initialize your function with default values. Now let's see some more properties. For example, you want to override these values. How you can override these values is you can pass some new value here. For example, 134. So, and when I build this program, it will still run, and I want to show you what will be the result. The result is 144. So what it is doing is it takes this parameter as your first parameter, right? So whenever you pass the parameter, how it knows that which parameter is this? Is this a first parameter or is this a second parameter? It in C++, when you pass the parameter, it just goes to first parameter and then second parameter and then third parameter. So if you write here only one value, it will be assigned to your first parameter. When you write here the second value, for example 234, it will be assigned to the second parameter. And now the new values of these two parameter is for first number it's 134, it is being overwritten by this, 20 is being overwritten by 134, and the second number is now 234, which is 234 is overwritten by 10. And now when you build your program once again and run it, it will show you the sum of these two numbers which you have passed, right? 134 plus 234 is 368. Okay, so this is how you can initialize or your parameter or as default parameter initialization. right? Now, if you are using function prototyping, so I have already explained you in the previous video how to prototype your function. If you are using this function below your main, then you need to prototype your function here. So if you are using function prototyping, you just need to copy this and paste it here and just give a semicolon. And when you do your function declaration, you don't need to initialize this values in here in the declaration. You just need to initialize your default argument values in the prototype, not in the declaration. So if you are declaring function below your main and you are prototyping it, just initialize these default values in the prototyping, not in the declaration. It will still work fine. So let's run the program, compiling it and running it, and it will show the same value, right? So always remember that when you are prototyping it, just initialize it at the time of prototyping and not at the time of declaration.